Welcome to Game Theory, Econ 437. This is just going to be an introduction to the course and then the syllabus, a very short example and a very short lecture and quiz. First, introduce myself. I'm Jose Vasquez. I've been teaching with the Econ department for about 20 years here in Champaign. I traditionally teach the Intro to Econ class, which you guys might have taken with me already. But I also teach game theory, two types of the game theory class, a 200 level class and a 400 level class, which is this one. So this one should be a pretty fun class, as we mentioned a little bit. I also want to introduce, there's going to be two dogs here with me during the sessions. That's one over there resting on the couch. Her name is Matilda. I have another one. Matilda's about 6.5 years old. She's a rescue. I have another year and a half golden retriever that likes to hide. So you may see her at some point. So don't get scared if you actually see another big brown dog walking behind me. So I gave you a little choice in your Moodle page for you to answer. And you took principles with me. You might have seen this question. So this is essentially our first game of the class. And as many games in the class, it will give you an option to earn extra credit. And the rules of the game were the following. You're going to have a choice to collude or defect. If everyone chooses collude, then every student gets 10 points in the final exam. But if everyone chooses to collude and one person chooses to defect, well, the person that defects gets 50 points and everyone else gets nothing. Now, if more than one person chooses to defect, then no students get any points. So I gave you a chance to vote in Moodle, and I'm going to wait until more people vote in order to see what happened. So the game you're playing with other students is not so different than the games companies play with each other when they are in a market structure called oligopoly. For instance, Coca-Cola and Pepsi are the big players in the soda. Airlines, either in a hub like Chicago or New York, or more importantly, or probably more so in a small town like Champaign, when there are only one or two airlines, or Bloomington, Illinois. If the operating system is only two or three or big retail stores like Target or Walmart, Home Depot and Lowe's, right? And they're playing games with each other because every action that one company takes, let's say Home Depot, it's going to affect directly the outcome of the other company. So there's a lot of examples that we're going to talk about in class and business and economics of game theory. But there's also a lot of examples out of economics. In voting, the voting game is also a game, right? When you decide to vote or not. Many people attributed that game or the dynamics of that game to the reason why many Democrats didn't turn out to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016, right? When you're deciding to vote, you're playing a game. You can vote and take the time it takes to go to the voting station, the polling station, but you have to measure that against the benefits, which are and a lot of times very small personally, individually, because your vote is probably not going to make any impact on the outcome of the election. Now, countries play games with each other too, and when they're actually negotiating with each other, the Cold War, the nuclear powers were playing in the 1940s and 1950s. Is essentially one of the reasons the field of game theory was developed in order to study the strategic decisions that each country had at a time. Now, the game you play with, you actually going to be playing a lot of games in your real life all the time. And I think a classic one for a student is when you work in a team, right? When you work in a team, even though these people look really happy there, a lot of the times I'm sure you have experienced a situation in which perhaps one of the team players is not doing, or the team the students in the team is not going to work as much as other people on the team. And if your instructor doesn't take that into consideration, then that could be detrimental for the performance of all students, right? And then, you play games all the time in your real life. And the text and driving is probably one of the best examples these days in which the individuals, each of us, is actually making decisions about whether to tax or not, but our individual decisions are going to impact society as a whole. And sometimes there could be particular situations in which the benefits and costs of the individual don't match the benefits and costs of society. So when that happens, we have a situation in which if we leave the situation to its logical outcome or logical equilibrium, society will actually end up with a really bad outcome. So all of these situations, in particular the Texan driving, the nuclear arms deal, the voting game, they're actually parts of the game of games that are very similar to the game you will be playing with other students when you vote in the collude or defect game. And that game is called the Prisoner's Dilemma game. And it's perhaps one of the most famous or the most famous game in all of game theory. So obviously we're going to spend a lot of time this class talking about the Prisoner's Dilemma game. And that's probably the one we're going to start focusing right away, perhaps more on the second lecture, the second quiz. But to kind of introduce the idea of the classic Prisoner's Dilemma game, it's important that I'll do it now because you get a pretty good feeling of how this classic game in the traditional setup is very similar to the situations I just described of text-denied driving, working in groups, nuclear powers, negotiating with each other, and so forth. All right. So let's introduce the game, and then I'm going to leave you with the decision in the game, and then we leave it there in terms of content for the class, and then I'll talk a little bit about the syllabus. All right. The classic prisoner dilemma is the following. You have two suspects who have been brought up to the station. The police and the district attorney don't have enough information in order to, or enough facts in order to convict them. So what they do is they put them in different rooms and they offer them each separately the following deal. So say if you confess and your partner doesn't, then you can get a reduced 1-year sentence on the basis of your confession. And then your partner will go to jail for 10 years. Now, if you both confess, then each of you will get 3-year sentence. Now they both know, and here's what the problems are. Each suspect knows that if none of them confesses, either of them stay quiet, then the district attorney doesn't have enough evidence to convict them for more than 2 years. So if you were one of these criminals and you were given this option, what should you do? Should you confess? Should you stay silent? Or would you have to know what your other suspect is doing in order to make a decision?